So for this week, in kind of our two-part coaching series here, we had Coach Robert Furth of the Holly Springs High School. So Holly Springs High is just down the road from us, and I've been working with Holly Springs now since, well, let's see, I guess for the past 4 seasons, so since 2022. And Coach Furth is honestly the most humble, genuine human being you're ever going to come across. He came from a military background. I think that was cool that we were able to hit that off, right the head, because, as we know, this podcast has military flair to it, more than that. But, that military discipline, that military, upbringing definitely helped shape him quite a bit, and throughout his coaching career. Coach Furth and I hit it off right off the bat because we were both walk-ons at NC State. So he has a lot of ties there, but through his coaching journey, you can see one of the things we start diving into is COVID and how much COVID had an impact on his team and all the teams across the nation, how crazy of a time that was. But not only just during the pandemic, but the ramifications after the pandemic, how we've seen players losing mental toughness, losing discipline. And there's a lot of parent enabling of these behaviors, so it's no matter what you do to try and correct these things and improve your culture, the one thing that you can't control is the parental influence, the parents wanting to coddle and keep their players safe, their children safe, which I totally understand. But at the same time, you have a winning program here with Holly Springs, and it's very hard to maintain that same drive, that same expectation, and enforce those same high standards when parents are coming into this being a little bit more cautious, a little bit more careful. And so Coach Furth talks a lot about that. But anyway, what are your thoughts? What did you think about the interview?
I thought it was great. I always love talking to Coach Furth. I think his background's very impressive, especially in the, I don't think since he's been at Holly Springs, he's had a losing season. I don't think he has.
I don't think he has either.
Since 2014 up till now, I don't think he's ever had a losing season as the head coach.
And it's besides the past 2 seasons, which I think are very uncharacteristic of Coach Furth and Holly Springs. We're talking 9-1.
Yeah,
like conference champions. Yeah, very absolutely.
And I think that shows because when I was coaching for Scott, I always tell that story whenever I sit in on like the leadership seminars. I mean, in my opinion, with my experience, like coaching for Scott and playing and like coaching against Coach Furth, if you're a high school coach and you don't have a leadership council, you're missing. You're just missing an entire like section for development and to ultimately win effectively. Because when we played Holly Springs in 2022, we had multiple Division I guys, like good, like guys that are actually playing it at Power 5 schools currently. We were up 16 points at halftime, and it was 16-0, and they came back and beat us. And I think that was the first year the leadership council was established at Holly Springs High School on the football team. And I think that's a large reason why, because one, Coach Furth's a hell of a coach, but two, there was a lot of buy-in, and you could just tell, like, it didn't matter. And that was the one thing I always took from that game is like the difference in mentality that they were playing with. They were down by 20 points, and you would have thought that, it was a tie game with 5 minutes left. Like, there was no foot off the gas. There was no slashing of the shoulders. I mean, I still remember that they had that inside linebacker. Didn't he go to Princeton? He's an Ivy League kid. Like, just the epitome of a leader, but just zero quit on both sides of the ball. So I think you always get that with Holly Springs and Coach Furth, but I think it was taken to another level when he implemented a leadership council, and you can see it when you watch his teams play.
Yeah, and he has been the front runner for this leadership council, and even to the point of bringing in younger players. Like it used to just be rising seniors, the potential captains, if you will. And then we started opening the door to freshmen, sophomores, juniors. So we have leaders representing JV in addition to varsity on the leadership council. So yeah, I completely agree, and that was a great point that if you're a coach running your own program, running your own leadership program, or having an outsider come in to help you with that program, either way, you want to do this, and it's a big task. So if you are going to do this, like Coach Chadwick, I mean, it's not an easy thing to kind of switch off the military, not the military, but the football fundamentals, to switching off, talking defense and offense, to talking about leadership and giving and encouraging your players, supporting them, giving them homework assignments from the leadership lens, taking on a book like Extreme Ownership, whatever the case may be. But there's a lot of value there. So definitely, this is going to be a great interview especially for coaches, players. We hope you really enjoy this. And, if this is something that you're interested in and want to learn more information about it, reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk with you more about that and how you can set up your own leadership development program. So without further ado, here's Coach Furth. All right, so joining us today, we have Coach Furth, the head coach of the Holly Springs Golden Hawks. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So if for those who are unaware, if you can kind of just give us a quick backstory of just kind of where you came to be and eventually how you got the job here with the Golden Hawks.
Well, to start from I guess a young age, I always wanted to coach. I did, always had it in me. I was always the kid on the team that was coaching everybody else, telling them kind of what to do. People probably got annoyed at me because I was always, studying on how to be better, because I was never the fastest or the strongest, but definitely not the biggest. But I always knew how to get things done. So I was always kind of teaching everybody how to do things. And I got lucky. My high school coaches in football, which I did football, baseball, wrestled, ran track 1 year, even played soccer when I was younger. So I did it all, but I got lucky in football, and they moved on to NC. A couple of them moved on to NC State. So I saw my opportunity to kind of go into them and learn when I got into college. And I walked on the football team, learned as much as I could there. And then actually did not coach coming out of college. So I was like, I don't know if I'm, cut out to do this. And I don't know, maybe a year out of school, I got a grad assistant job at NC State and fell in love with it. So from there, I bounced around. I went to Clayton High School early on in my career, and ended up coaching at a few at a D2 school, and then a few more high schools, and got to Holly Springs in 2014 with Wayne Bragg, and he was the head coach. He stepped down after the first season, and I took over, and I haven't looked back since.
One of the things we talked about a lot is COVID and how difficult. I just wanted to touch on that for a second, and how difficult it was, coaching during that season, but also, kind of the change in attitudes of the players, after COVID. Can you kind of share a little bit about that, kind of what you experienced after, maybe just during the season and afterwards, and how difficult that was to be able to coach during that time period and then thereafter?
So coming off, we had one of our best seasons ever coming off in 2019. And then of course COVID hit in the spring of 2020. And I didn't see any football player pretty much other than this type of setting, and again, until somewhere late 2020, November, December 2020. So there's a 6-month period where we didn't even see our guys, right? Like other than just over Zooms. And that, I think kids became a little bit more defiant almost. I wouldn't say, all kids were that way, but I think they found a little bit of freedom in the fact that, you know what, maybe if we miss a day or we don't do something, that we're not going to get punished, because they weren't, right? Like there's nothing happening to them whatsoever. They were sleeping late. They were on their own schedule. So during COVID, it was rough keeping them focused, right? It was rough keeping those kids doing what they were supposed to do. And then coming out of COVID, I think getting them back to understand what it was like to be a team, a brother, somebody that had your back. That was tough wrangling them in and getting them to understand that. So, COVID definitely set us back. I think we're just now kind of getting out of that.
A lot of coaches say that.
Yeah.
A lot of coaches have that, like a lot of my friends that are still coaching, they say that just now recently, it feels like kids are back into the swing of being high school athletes, into the swing of things. Like they're not as defiant, like you said. Because even me, like my generation in like working America, right? Like I was in the military during COVID, which was a problem of its own. Like I was in Iraq when COVID was a thing, and we had these like live feed televisions and the cafeteria, and we would go in, we're like, dude, the corona, like it's a joke, coronavirus, like come on, dude. And then we would see like a live feed of like America, and it would be like Cincinnati and like a ghost town, dude. We were like, what is going on? This is crazy. But a lot of people say that. A lot of people say that the kids are just now getting back into the swing of things. I mean, you see that across the board in sports and working class, like people who work a 9 to 5, like they're not hybrid anymore. Like you're required to be in an office because we pay millions of dollars to occupy this space monthly. So things like that. So I think that's pretty interesting.
And I would think, speaking from a military standpoint, because we run our program very similar, obviously not exactly the same, and we've been a little bit less, I don't want to say strict, maybe regimented is a good term for it, but getting back into that, we have to be somewhere at a certain time, we have to get up, we have to be just like you guys are in line, ready to go. Everybody looks the same, feels the same, does the same. I think getting to that, we're finally getting a little bit more into the regimen of it, and everybody doing the same thing. And even kids starting to believe. I think we lost a lot of belief during COVID. Like people just didn't believe, because where did COVID came out of nowhere, right? Like this isn't real. Like you said, we don't believe this isn't. Where is COVID now? I think we're just starting to get that trust back, and belief, and I think a lot of kids had that. I think it has skewed sports in two different directions. I think there were the ones from before 2020 and now the ones maybe after 2020 that have a little bit different view of sports, especially, I know you guys will probably touch on this a lot in your podcast, but NILs and revenue sharing and all the stuff that goes along with it, right? There's two ways. And I think we can have both, but there has to be more constraints on everything. These kids have not been constrained since COVID. They don't know how to almost act in a regimented situation.
And that's really interesting that you said, because I'm not sure if you saw, but like Nick Saban at the White House, I think it was last week or over the weekend, this is an interesting topic because of the kids that are coming out of COVID that are now playing at the college D1 Power 5 level. So with the NIL and the portal involved, you're going to take a kid that's unregimented, that has not been in a structured program because of a pandemic, and he's going to commit, you're going to give him $1 million, and then you're going to turn around and get upset with him when he doesn't want to show up at 4:30 in the morning, August 1st. And a part of me is almost like, you can't blame the kid because the years of like development that was supposed to happen was kind of taken from them that everyone else got. So I can see it like 50-50, but at the same time, I'm like, the NIL, dude, it's murky water. Like there's no, it almost seems like it's just the Wild West in terms of money transfer. And now you're bringing that whole other element of kids that have not had structure, and you're giving them large amounts of money and assets and expected to act like a professional, because that's what it is. Like when you're getting paid 6 figures to play football, you're a professional.
Lane Kiffin said it best. It's the wild, wild west. It is free agency on steroids with no limitations.
Yeah. And then I know there's a lot of right now coaches at other schools that are heavily recruiting, and they say they're not. Like during the season, you see it. I forget what head coach, what university he was at, but he had brought it up in a press conference. He's like, I saw the messages. You can't tell me these schools aren't recruiting my guys, telling them to enter the portal. It's definitely happening. So,
and we're seeing a lot of that similarly in the high school level, where a lot of guys are now, what I guess, technically moving into different districts so that they can be on a different team. And I know, Coach, you and I have had plenty of conversations about that, but I think the hard part is you're trying to groom a culture. You have a guy come in as a freshman and with a lot of potential, and we get into the situation where you want them to eventually be a leader on this team, and all of a sudden maybe their expectations for the team aren't really aligning with yours, and maybe they think they're going to get a better opportunity somewhere else. And then all of a sudden, they're like, hey, coach, I'm actually going to be leaving the team. I'm going to go somewhere else now. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I think we're seeing that a lot nowadays, especially at the high school level. And it's kind of like, well, what school has the best, where am I going to get the best looks for the college level, in high school?
Well, so I have to tread lightly on this.
Yeah, topic. we gotta be careful. This podcast could go 3 hours now that we're on.
I look, from day one I was brought up. My dad was in the Army. I was brought up from, you do what's right with the people that you're with, right? You respect everybody. It's yes sir, no sir. We weren't even allowed to come to dinner without a t-shirt on. We weren't allowed to put our elbows on the table. There were things we couldn't do. Well, was that too strict? I don't know. I didn't make my kids do that, but I definitely made sure they were proper when they were dressing people. You don't even get that anymore, right? Like that was, and the big word is advocate, right? Like the parents advocating for their kids. So when it comes to the recruiting aspect of it, it is frustrating. And it's frustrating from the point that, like you said, we're going to take a freshman and build him up. And by his junior year, if he's really, really good, somebody's going to try to come steal him. Well, that means I have to go steal another kid, or I have to recruit other kids. Where does it end? And in high school, it's supposed to be illegal unless they physically move for other reasons than athletics. So at what point does that, do you cross the line, and where does it stop? And, I've stopped kind of worrying about it because it is out of my control. The only thing I could control is recruiting kids into my school, which A, is very hard, and B, we just don't do. I'm 31 years into this profession, and it's just something that I don't believe in right now. Maybe because we can't do it. That's what everybody would say, right? Well, you're not good at it, so you're mad at us. Well, no, it's still illegal. By the letter of the law. And B, I don't understand how you can preach team and brotherhood and camaraderie and all those good things that you like a team and a leader to be. And well, okay, if you want to leave, go ahead. Right?
I was watching a podcast this week with the sergeant major of the Army, And in the Army in particular, you have your enlisted, you have your officers, and not normally, the officers are only going to be at that unit for 18 to 24 months holding a leadership position. And the sergeants and like the enlisted guys are going to be there much longer. And he was talking about culture, and he said, if the culture is bad, it's because of the NCOs. And if the culture is good, it's because of the NCOs. Officers have nothing to do with culture, and that's because they're going to be there much longer. And like, I believe in that. Like at school, like your culture is going to be very, very, very good. The brotherhood's going to be strong if you have kids that started together in the 9th grade and are playing together in the 12th. And what we're seeing is kids are getting halfway through, they're starting to develop, they go into their junior year when offers start to funnel in, or they think they're supposed to start funneling in. So they jump ship, and then that destroys that really limits the culture. And then it puts a lot of extra added stress on the coaching staff at a high school level of something that they really shouldn't have to worry about, because their job is develop football players and young men and women, for the women that do play, into being effective members of society, or to prepare them for the next level. And when people are jumping ship, it's like, well, okay, not only do I have to worry about winning football games and developing these kids, now I have to worry about, am I going to have my starting wide receiver in 8 weeks, or is he going to transfer? You know, and this starting wide receiver might be your best player, and that, you know, he might have a lot of influence on a lot of the younger guys, a lot of his peers, his colleagues. And I think it is a culture destroyer. And, you know, I don't know how they're going to, I think at both levels, but it starts, not to go on a rant, but it starts at the NFL. For years, college was looking at the NFL saying, well, why don't we get paid? We draw in the same amount of revenue, or a little bit under, you know, and then that trickled down. Everyone got what they wanted. They opened the floodgates. NIL, the transfer portal, and now all of a sudden you're seeing coaches, you know, this is ridiculous, culture problems, kids aren't prepared. And now I went on Instagram the other day, on Max Preps posted a 9U kid with this animated transfer, like, I'm going to play for a new Pee Wee team picture. And it, like Max Preps or like Bleacher Report, and there's nothing wrong with either one of those outlets. I think they're great media outlets. I'm like, dude, this kid's 9. Like,
So, and I think it's all, you know, for lack of a better term, social media, it's click driven, right? So that is not their problem, right? Their problem is to get clicks and earn money.
yeah,
So,
that's true. Yeah.
and so that's really what this society has become that way. And it's like you said, that it's trickled down. And I mean, I didn't realize it's trickled down that much, but I have seen, you know, 8th graders saying, I'm going to transfer to this high school before they're even transferred to high school. So it's definitely hurting culture.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing.
So, Coach, you know, it's always every single year we have, you know, the seniors are leaving. We have a new group of athletes joining into the mix. But you know, what is the aim? What is the goal for your culture that you try to achieve every single year? So, if you had to describe it, you know, within 3 character traits, or however you want to describe that, but what is the goal for your culture before you get to the season?
Well, and I talked to the guys this morning in our workouts that our biggest number one goal that we have year in and year out is belief in each other, right? Believing is our biggest goal. If you don't believe in the coaches, if you don't believe in the players or the system, then you're going to have a hard time in our system. You're going to have a hard time existing. And that's where I talked about coming out of COVID, was getting that belief back, right? Kids believing in what is good, right? What is good, not just, and I say this all the time when I speak, not just wins and losses, right? If I could predict how many wins we were going to have every year, I wouldn't be in coaching. I'd be in Vegas somewhere making a lot of money, right? All I can say is, you know, we've got to believe in each other and in the coaches and the system to to at least give us a chance to win football games, right? To give us the best chance to win. And then we talk about being loyal, like, and this is the toughest one because of recruiting now, being loyal to your teammates, being loyal to the program, being loyal to the system. You've got to believe in what we're doing, from the weight room to the field, from the classroom to the field. You've got to believe in what we're doing and be loyal to it. Don't talk about, well, this team does it better. I don't like talking about other teams. They're not our problem, right? Our problem is to stop them, not help them. Our problem isn't to worry about them. Our problem is to worry about ourselves. So that's the biggest thing. So that, and my third thing is just being servant, right? Serving each other the best we can to help each other. And those are probably my three biggest traits. And we go in every year, we set our long-term goals, and we talk to the parents about it. And we talk to them about, believing in each other and believing in us to the point where, try to make sure your kids are where they're supposed to be when they're supposed to be there. So I also feel like we're running into a lot of the parents are making excuses for the kids, right? Like, and that's some of it. And I don't know when that started, because I can tell you right now, my parents would not let me out of anything. Even when I was sick, you're going to school. If you can walk and talk, you're going to school. If you're not contagious, you're doing it. So I don't know when something like that happened, but we've run into that last couple of years more than we've ever had. And I think that's just becoming a problem with the NIL and what they're seeing at the other level, and it just trickling down. And again, great for the kids. Like you said, if they can make money, let them make money, but there's got to be some kind of accountability, right? And I think our accountability has been lost.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Cam.
No, go ahead, Joey.
I always thought too, like the year I did coach, I was like, the kids were never the issue. 9 out of 10 times. That was like the one thing I took away from coaching, is that like the short-lived career I had for one season was the kids aren't the problem. Like, you have your kids that are like, this kid's going to have a rough go, the first 4 or 5 years in the adult world, like this is going to be tough. I hope that he pushes through. But for the most part, I remember going home some days, I'm like, just like flushed. like especially like JV games were inherently like, that was tough because the freshmen, like mom and dad, like he plays this position.
Right.
We're like, no, he doesn't. He's not an outside linebacker. He's this. And they're like, no, he play. And you're like, and they're yelling like from the sidelines. And we're like, I don't know what, this is insane. So I remember, that was the one thing I took, like, it's not the kids. The kids just really want to play. Like, for the most part.
Oh, 100%. No, I mean, you were a kid. We were kids at one time.
Yeah,
They don't believe we were, right? But all we want to do is go out and play. I remember playing football in the backyard, baseball in the cul-de-sac, right? Like, we just wanted to be kids, and the parents, the parents tell. We've had kids. We've moved into a position. They come back next day and say, "Well, I think I'm better here." Well, do you think you're better there, or your parents tell you you're better there, right? Like, that's
right.
That's the hardest part. I talked to a couple parents the other day and asked them where their kids were at morning workouts. And their answer was, yeah, the kid will get up. We have a hard time with it. I mean, come on, this is your kid. If you're going to advocate for your kid to be in a certain position, you better make sure they get to where they're supposed to be. So, yeah, I agree with that.
That's crazy.
Yeah, between the enabling and the making excuses. And yeah, I was just having a chat with another parent that they're like, yeah, well, we live 30 minutes away. And so it's just harder for us to get over there and to get there for the 6 a.m. workouts. But I'm over here like, I wouldn't matter. I'm like, this is the most important thing for him right now, is to be there on time. It's like, if it's any inconvenience to me, I don't care about that. Like, I want what's best for them. So I really don't understand that. And I can imagine that being really difficult, especially when, you know, or the comments I'm sure you've heard where it's, you know, hey, I think you're being too hard on them, or, you know, it's the workouts are too tough, the practices are too tough. But I remember you even saying, Coach, that it's like, well, I've been doing the same thing now for the past however many years.
31
and,
years.
and it's been successful. Yeah. And it's like, you look at any of the teams, it's a hard standards, high expectations. You know, that's how these teams are going to win. And you want your son to be on a successful team. Well, I need everybody doing this exact same thing. So it just boggles my mind that parents are pushing back against this. You know, it's some things I'll never understand.
Have you run into the you know, the coaches that you got to make it fun for the players nowadays, right? You got to make practice fun. You got to, and I always tell them, I mean, we try to, but we do it by changing things up, right? You're still going to have your drills. You still got to have your schemes, and you got to work them. But I always tell the players, look, it's not always going to be fun.
Yeah.
But winning is fun, right? And that's the only way I know how to get to
being good is fun.
Right.
Being a talented football team is fun.
Yes.
I played in a small town right outside South Philly. I think there was one practice my father was like, no. And it was the only time, like, and I actually had like something that I had to do where he had to cut me short, but the practice was like, I think a couple parents, and that kind of spoke volumes, like looking back at it, I'm like that there's a fine line between like, you know, tough and pushing the limit. And we started, it was just one of those days I still remember, and this is like like I was in the 5th grade or 6th grade, and we started out practice, and it just like immediately, like first 10 minutes, we were on the sled. It didn't move. He picks the bag off, throws it, and just tells us to start running around the track. We ran around the track for 90 minutes. Just and like dudes were just walking. Like at this point, they were like doing like a light shuffle, like, but it was like, looking back, that was the one time where my father was like, all right, we got to go. Hey, we got to go do something, Coach. Like, I got to pull him. And he's like, all right, whatever. And we like gets in the car, calls my mom, and he's like, yeah, we're headed there now. And he's like, I'm going to be honest, I don't know how much I liked the way practice was going tonight. And he like, the coaches actually called in the parents the next day and apologized. They were like, hey, like, you know, I'm really sorry. that was
lost your cool there a little bit.
Yeah, but that was the thing, like this whole like fun thing. Like, yeah, winning's fun. Sports are fun. Football should be fun. But like, I never went into practice thinking like, I can't wait to have fun today. Like it was
100%. Like, it was always going to be a lot. It was always going to be, you know, intense. And honestly, in my opinion, I never really enjoyed practices that much. I enjoyed the games. Yeah. But I think, and I've talked to a lot of players that I play with in high school. There were times where we lost the week before, shouldn't have lost this game. And then our strength and conditioning coach came out. And mind you, our school, there were never parents that attended practice. My folks lived 30 minutes away. So maybe some of the coaches got away with the fact that there were just no parents around. We did full field bear crawls, you know, just like 10 of them. People are puking. And then we had to go practice after that. So, you know, which, I mean, you don't ever see that nowadays, but
and there is a fine line between that, right? Like you said, there is a fine line between being, I guess, punishment and insanity, or punishment cruelty, right? Like there is a fine line, and you do have to be careful.
100%. But I think for us and my teammates, you know, back then, it was kind of like that's how we bonded, and that's how we created the brotherhoods, because we all had to go through that same thing together. And that was, you know, the 2-a-days. And it was something we always talked about. You remember when Coach so-and-so did this during 2-a-days, we were all tired, and then he came out and did this. Like, that's where it becomes fun. It's like that shared conflict is what builds up the team, you know. And I think that's something to be said. It can't be fun all the time, you know. It's hard work, you know, and it's teaching them that if you put in the hard work, then it's going to be fun, because now you're ready to go and you're prepared. That's the difference, I think.
Well, even with like 2-a-days now, like when in Ohio, we had like we would go to Kentucky and do 3 days because at the time 3 days were still legal. So in Kentucky, so we'd drive across the border because I played in Cincinnati. Maybe I think it was to like Mount St. Joe College, and we would practice, break, practice, break, do an evening practice. Evenings were just with helmets because we were still in shells. And then we'd go into real 2-a-days. We'd have a 4-day, go back to Ohio, and then we'd do 15 days straight, 2-a-days, full pads, top and bottom. Yep. And I think the worst part was just like everyone says they're like, oh, I'm fine with being uncomfortable. It's like, no, you're not. Right. Putting on sweaty shoulder pads and a sweaty uniform in the middle of August, like that's uncomfortable.
And these kids have no idea about 2 days. No.
That's crazy. See, that's crazy.
Yeah, that is wild.
I remember waking up at 5, walking in, and it's that everyone has the same that quick thought of like, dude, what am I doing? Half my friends are like, they're in their bed sleeping right now with AC, and like the locker room smells. I'm about to like, especially as like a sophomore, like I was in rotation, but it's like I'm about to get just bombarded today. When
the worst is the smell of the grass, cut grass too, and that early in the morning when it's wet and just hot.
And you can just feel it beating off. You can feel the sun just starting to beat off the grass, and you're just like, it's just hot.
It's going to be a day. It's going to be a day.
And then you go home and you're like, oh, that's cool. I get to do this tomorrow.
Yeah, the same thing. But again, there's so many good lessons about that. Like, Coach, one of the things we always talk about is buds, for example, and there's a lot of these psychologists that when they examine buds, are like, the guys who quit think about it as, oh my gosh, I got 6 months of doing this same thing over and over again. There's no way I can make it. But if you frame your mind to be thinking, okay, all I need to do right now is make it to the next meal. Like all I need to do right now is just make it till that next break. Like if you just compartmentalize it, just focus on, the reasonable short goal ahead of you, then you're fine. But if you start thinking, but you don't have, it's like you don't have that now. Now it's just kind of like it's more convenient, more, easier. But I mean, still, it's not to say that it's all easy right now, but there's just so many things to be thought about that.
Well, and that's the other thing is, think of the bonds and the friendships you made, because how hard that was. I mean, we talk about that, and that, Joe, you know this from the military. When you're next to somebody and they're scratched and bleeding and sweating and they're hurting just as much as you, and you want to get it done just as much as them, that's special, right? When you guys finish, that's special. But the ones that don't finish, the ones that do quit, you think about them differently, I think. I mean,
you do. Like we would always do, like you obviously have your deployments, and like you don't want to be a deployment dodger. That's the one thing. Like that's the last thing you want to be. Now, if you have like your wife's pregnant and she's gonna, you got to arrive late, or you get injured and you break an ankle, I shatter a femur, get a concussion on a jump, like something crazy. But like that's obviously like tier. You don't want to be that. But in the training events in particular, we would always do a culminating event. In Bragg, we would go to JRTC in Louisiana, and it's Louisiana. Everything about it. Like you're in the swamps. It sucks. There's like, they brief you on wildlife and you're like, how are we even allowed to train in there? And they're like prepared for real life casualties. They're like, we have to be prepared for this. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, especially at a young age, I was like, man, I would not want to be the guy that's just like, even when you get hurt, to be like, oh, that's it. And then you're like, you get real life evac'd off of the event, because then it sucks. Watching all your boys come in, like it's over. They've been out there for 20 days, haven't slept, haven't ate, they're just suffering. They come in and it's just that, like, you can feel the camaraderie in the room because they achieved something that was just inherently shitty.
Right.
And, so that bond right there, I think that's why they do it getting ready for a deployment. Like, all right, this is your certification to go.
Right.
Because it sucks, man. We had guys that were like, no, I don't want to go. But they're immediately ripped like you're not a leader, you're ripped from your platoon, get out. Like we don't, and the military is not kind. You know, it's not a pay to play.
They're not calling your parents.
Oh no. It's like they're gonna make you go, but you're gonna sit and you're gonna serve food for a whole 30 days. And then like you're going because we have to hit a certain percentile to go. But like I wouldn't want to serve food for 30 days. I would want to be with my guys, but that's just me though.
Well, I went home a few weekends ago, unfortunately, for an event that I didn't want to go to, but I saw at least 10 or so of my teammates that I played with back in high school. And the first thing they said was, and I probably haven't seen them in 20, 25 years. I can't make it back to all the reunions and stuff because they're usually in the fall when I'm coaching. And of course they all, you know, wow, you're coaching, that type stuff. How cool is that? And I'm like, yeah, it's cool. At times it's real fun. At times it's rough, but the first thing they all asked me was, you remember that day we did 16 400s on the track coming out of spring ball, and we all thought we were having a pizza party and everybody was fired up and we're doing somersaults and everything on the grass, and all of a sudden he's like, line up on the line, and we run 5 and then we take a break. We run 5 more, and this one guy's filming it. He's like, yeah, you got to tell everybody. They don't believe me when I say we did that. But that's what we remember, right? Those things that we did together like that. And if I did that these years, like you said, if I did that, well, I'd probably have parents take the kids, right? Like on that 16th one,
Yeah.
My kid's not playing for you. And so those are the things you remember. And I remember I actually listened to one of the podcasts you guys were talking about. I don't know if it was Buds or if it was the Navy SEALs or what it was, but it was, you know, the guys that didn't make it in the officer training part of where, well, should we give them another chance? Well, you don't give them another chance because you know they've already quit once on you, right? Yeah. They didn't make it. How do you give them another chance without going through the full process again? And that's kind of like football. I had a coach at Fayetteville State that would tell the kids when we went there, I think they had maybe won in the last 10 years, 5 games total. And in the last 50 years, I don't know if they had a winning season. Like it was terrible. And the first year we got there, we went 4-7, but then we didn't have a losing season for 8 straight years. And we actually won their first conference championship in 120 or whatever it was. I think it was 104. We're actually in the Hall of Fame as a team.
Wow.
In because of that team at Fayetteville State. But I remember the kids in the spring, because we got there in the spring and they're all fired up, right? They're running into the gym, ready to go in slippers and in, you know, slides and in, you know, like pajamas. And our head coach at the time, who has since passed, he told them all to turn around and leave. He said, just get out. He said, if you're not going to come in here ready, prepared to work, then you're going to quit on me. You're not ready to go. And they're all, no, we're not going to quit, you know. And sure enough, that fall, I bet you half of them quit as soon as we got into 2 days, because we did have 2 days. And in our conditioning test, and I don't think, Cameron, you were later than me on that, but we used to do 40s and up downs. So we would do 2.5 minutes up downs, 2.5 minutes of 40s. And you would work your way up to the end. We called it graduation of 15 minutes of straight up downs. And you had guys that would start on one end of the field and end up on the other because they couldn't even stand up, right? They were just, and we would do that. And sure enough, they would quit on you, right? And he'd tell you, you can't come back in the spring because you've already quit once on me. You'll quit again.
Yeah.
And it's just easy, right? They tell you after you quit the first time, it's easy to quit the second time. It gets easier. So I tell kids that all the time. They don't believe me, but it's tough.
So with obviously, because we've had to modify practices so much, you know, with all the, you know, new regulations and rules and whatnot. So how would you say that, do you create that same intensity? And I know that's something that you've mentioned quite a bit during our leadership councils, is that we need to be more intense during practices. So I guess like how do you best create that intensity? Like what are you looking for in like the ideal practice?
I think you have to get them into the mindset of you've got to be focused and intense, right? it's hard when you're not a great athlete, or it's hard if you're not even if you're a good athlete, but when you have to work really hard to do something, it's intense just to get to that point. It's hard to get that unless you actually do it, right? To tackle, you've got to tackle. I believe to be a good tackler, you've got to tackle, right? But it's about repetition, not necessarily about banging and banging and banging, but it's about repetition. So you try to use ways that you're not banging body on body, right? You are using simulated dummies that are a little bit more like a human, so you can get that, but it's still tough. It's still tough. I think mentally, you just have to keep ingraining in them, like this is intense. We've got to do it this way, guys, and you've got to feel like this is a real game. Other ways to do it is just speed too, right? So you may go for 10 minutes, you might go as hard as you can, maybe on air, maybe against other players, but you're going as hard as you can in that 10 minutes and then taking a short break, as opposed to, I think I've been at practices where we've gone 45 minutes a team, and it's like, oh my God, when's this ever gonna end? Like this, if I'm bored, I know the kids are bored, right? Like that's just bad. But you ramp up the intensity in shorter periods, as opposed to, just beating each other's brain out, right? Until they can't stand up. And I think that's one way of really doing it.
And I also noticed, so when you guys are doing your workouts, also noticed that there's a lot more of like a cadence, and when you guys go through in each one of the groups, it's like, okay, next one's up, 3, 2, 1, go, and then everybody starts doing their reps, whether it's cleans or stuff like that. I'm curious if that's that same, like, we're just trying to get an intensity going with their workouts, they keep guys engaged. Does that have anything to do with that?
So, yes, it does, but I also think that's a little bit of a byproduct of the COVID era, right? We're trying to get guys back into, like, as soon as you're done, you're at the next person's right up behind you, ready to go. As soon as they're done, the next person's right behind them, ready to go. We noticed we had a lot of kids wandering to the water fountains or wandering, to a water cooler, as opposed to next one up, ready to go, next one up, ready to go. And so in the weight room, we put them on a cadence just to help them outside too. So when you're doing drills out on the field, well, this is how we do it in the weight room. This is how we're going to do it out on the field. Yeah. You're going to get your breaks, right?
Develop
your break. Yeah.
Develop so SOP. Yeah. So kids just know immediately. That's really good. That's smart.
Yeah. So we're just trying to get them repetition wise, wherever we're at. That's how we do it. Because before COVID, we had a 3-station system where we would rotate groups and we put them on a time. So you had, we're going to do each lift for 8 minutes, and we're going to get every rep in those 8 minutes. And then you're going to rotate to a new station. And those kids would come out, they look like they went swimming, right? Like they were we lost that in COVID. So now we're trying to get back to that. Just, this is our memory recall, right? It's almost like Pavlov's dog. You blow the whistle and bam, you're on the line. So we're trying to that's why we've implemented that a little bit in the weight room.
It definitely seems like there's a positive in intensity. Like there's definitely, it created more of an intensity, whether it was intended or not, but it was, that's definitely there. I've noticed. So, one of the things where we first met was through incorporating, more of a organized leadership program on the team and leadership development. So I'm curious, from when we first started, what would you say is like some of the main impacts you've seen through the program that we implemented, again, with our leadership council, working through, again, we always, Joey, we always go back to Extreme Ownership, which in my opinion is one of the best leadership books out there. And then teaching the guys a little bit about the leadership lessons in that book, and then applying them, whether it's off season or in season. So, thoughts, Coach, as to how that's made an impact from your perspective?
So I think the biggest impact, and I think you'd appreciate this. We have a freshman we put on in the spring that is in the leadership group. And we've had trouble getting the book, right? Between me and you, we've had some issues getting the book. Well, we're one short. And he's the one I sacrificed because he's the freshman and he'll be in it for 4 more years, right? He's going to get the full effect of it. But I just, by the fact that he's a freshman, he didn't get the book. I even gave my book out, right? Like I've even given mine out. So because the one book that I'm trying to get still on order, and I don't know what the deal is. So I'm going to go back in and reorder it some other way. But that's kind of what I've seen, right? Everybody wants to be on this leadership council. It has become now, I think this is going our 4th year.
Yeah.
I believe.
Yep.
That they want to be on it now, right? Like they want to be that leader. Well, not all of them are leaders. We know that. And just like anything. And you've got to earn it. And this freshman earned it in the fall because he worked. I mean, he killed it in the fall, just coming to workouts all summer and then in the fall. So that is one thing that it's done is it's made these guys step up and want to lead. That's big in itself right there. Just wanting to. Now, again, not all of them are, not all of them can, but I think it has done that. It is also, we haven't missed in our morning workouts. We've been on the line 5 minutes early, ready to stretch every day this year. Now, we haven't had full participation every day, but we are on the line every day, ready to stretch. So initiative is another aspect, I think, that it has taken. And hopefully, like last week and tonight, they have learned that even if we don't tell them to do the chapter the next week or, we forget something, they're taking initiative doing it, right? Like they're learning that they don't have mom and dad to always tell them what to do. And I think that is huge. Just the buy-in, the initiative, the culture of that is big. If you get kids starting to do that, you start building a program. We always talk about a program, right? We're not varsity and JV, we're a program, right? We're all inclusive because you can't be a good football player or a good football team without being a program.
I like that. Like when I was in high school, so we practiced together. We were a program, but JVs had no practice. Like there was no singular practice at all. And then for like Saturdays is when JVs would play. The whole there was 2 coaches that would show up.
Right.
And it's like, all right, and that's one thing where I do stand with the parents where I'm like, okay, like they're here every day at practice. They're doing this. They're doing the right thing. We're dropping them off. As coaches, you should at least be doing the bare minimum and coaching our kids, even if they are a JV player. Like that's not right. And that
I agree.
I like that, because it also like, it's not a good look, I think, for a program to do that. And that's our program kind of got shunned. And then the JV went like 4-6 because they had no practice. And the following year, it was really funny. The following year, all the coaches banded together and they're like, we're taking JV seriously. Like the coaches that took JV seriously, they're like, we're not going to get the support from the regular coaching staff. So they would host 45-minute practices after main practice, and the whole JV team would go, and they ended up going 9-1. Like,
yeah.
They hardly lost to a team that was just, they were like, didn't win all year. We played them on Friday. We beat them by like 40 something points. The next day, the coaching staff was like, if you had less than this many snaps tomorrow, you're playing. So they're playing against seniors and juniors on a JV Saturday. And they only lost, I think it was like 12-14. I remember it vividly because I was like, holy shit. Like,
yeah. And I don't, so we're very similar. We do everything. So our varsity coaches and our JV coaches work together, and we don't even have a full complement on JV staff, but we have at least 2 on each side of the ball.
Yeah.
But our varsity coaches are there coaching on Thursday night, right? We split. So we split when we get into drills that we're going head to head, right? Whether it's 7-on-7 or inside or team or whatever we're doing. And we'll split JV and varsity, but they're both getting coached, right?
Yeah.
And that's because we have to. There are teams out there that win state championship after state championship, and they can be two separate programs. They can be a JV and a varsity, or they can be together, but they can split. They can have two different staffs, but that probably means they have so much talent that it doesn't matter that they're split, right? We have to, there may be a, mid-season, we have to pull a kid up. Well, he's got to know exactly what he's getting into, and whatever we're calling on varsity, they have to be calling on JV, and they need to know that. And that's why we do it, right? We do it for the practicality of it more than we do for the just the nature. I've seen it both ways. I've seen it done both ways. I've seen it work and not work both ways. I'm not saying what we do is perfect, but what for our situation, I think it is. I think it's the best way to do it.
And having these younger guys, the guys who are in JV, having them in leadership council is great because they can benefit from everything that we're talking about. They have the book or not, and they can apply it, in JV at the JV level just as much as the older guys can apply it at the varsity level. And once those guys get to be older and upperclassmen, now they've heard the same things, that repetition, year after year. And I got to think to myself, when I was back in high school and some of these concepts that we hit them with, it's like, if I had only known some of these things back when I was in high school, who knows where things would have ended up. But one of the things that we've always kind of seemed to come back to is, the peer-to-peer accountability is one of the hardest things for them to grasp. And Joey, I'm sure you probably have felt that too, but even me nowadays, it's difficult to have those brotherly criticism, those corrective conversations, right? But Coach, I don't know if you wanted to share the Austin story from last year when he had his accountability little coup that he organized in school.
Yeah, which one was which?
When he had the he said, hey, he went up to their teachers and said, hey, can you have them meet?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. So at our lunch time, we have, a 50-minute lunch. So he went and he told the teachers like to send them to room 14. I think it was 1408 or whatever it was for a meeting, but he didn't tell them what it was, right? Like he didn't tell them. He just said, can you send them down a little early and so we can take care of this. And so they all came down. They didn't know what it was. And he got them in there and he just laid into them, right? Like, why aren't you at 6 a.m.? Why aren't you, why aren't you being held accountable? Why aren't you doing what you're supposed to do? And he, that was big. Like that was big. And, that just shows you though, what kind of lessons they're learning in that to be able to get them down there. And he didn't trick them. He did, but hey, it's like ambush, I guess, right? Like when you go in at night, right? Like you gotta take care of what you gotta take care of. And he did, but that's out, but he had been in it too. Now these guys that have been in it 3 years, right? That have been with us, they actually get it too. Like they're working, this group of guys coming up are working so much harder than we were 3 years ago, even. And that was right post COVID then, and just coming off a year or so out. So it's outstanding what it's doing. And even if they don't necessarily read the book like we ask them to read it, what they're getting out of the lesson in itself, like them talking about the boat captains last week, like to me that's the greatest lesson I've ever, like that's one of the best explanations I've ever heard.
That's chapter 2, I think.
Chapter 2.
No bad leaders or no bad teams, only bad leaders.
That's a good one, man. Like it's that, I mean, it's just the truest chapter, I think.
Yes.
Anyway, if anyone served in the military or played sports or whatever the case may be, like Oh, dude, there were so many times that like our platoon leader, we wanted to ring him by his neck. And yeah, it was interesting too, because the dynamic that we would see, you would have an NCO and a platoon leader. You'd have a senior guy and then you'd have the PL. Technically, it's the PL's platoon, and then, but like it's not. And that's the unspoken rule. Like this isn't your platoon. Like shut up and color, do the paperwork. But there's times where that's not a mindset from the platoon sergeant. They're like, no, this is his platoon. And you're like, that's very dangerous to get into, because again, going back to the culture, the NCOs drive the culture. So if you're going to allow a guy that's going to be here for 24 months dictate things, or he could be there for 12 months and then take an executive officer position, that's going to, in my opinion, it could make the culture better or it could make the culture worse. But it's just, it's very interesting. But the boat crew, that chapter is like very, very, very spot on to a lot of experiences I've personally had within the military.
And go ahead.
Well, I was going to say you kind of nailed it on the head. It's our team, right? Like we're the leaders. I'm the ultimate leader, but I set the culture. And even if I see a coach not really complying to what we like or what our culture should be, I'll say something. But we always empower our kids to the point where, the best teams are the player-led teams, right?
100%.
If you go out there and you're going to fight for each other, sure, we're going to put you in the right direction and we're going to make sure that culture stays the way it should. But you guys are the one carrying on that culture, right? You're the ones that got to put it into action. We can't do it anymore. We're not on the field. So it's got to be, somebody's got to have the ultimate say in the person that's responsible. But I'm not going to let, like you said, I'm not going to let a senior dictate what our culture is. But I sure in the heck am going to expect him to carry that out, right? Like,
100%. Right.
And that's what we're saying, and that's what the boat cap. That's what that. Like, we're not saying that whoever was over those leaders, it was his fault that the boats were bad. It's the guy in there that's actually leading that team, that's with that group. If he does the right job, which it showed, you get it done. I don't care who you have, right?
And at some point, my goal is to get a seal on this podcast, because I want to know. It's almost like I wish we could just capture on film or hear from them what that dialogue looks like between that guy, that once they change the leaders, what that new leader now is saying to this group that's been in last place every single time. Like, what's going on? Like, what's that exchange looking like? And Leif Babin, who I think he writes that chapter, and he talks a little bit about it in the application to business section of that. And during our call last week, Coach, like I labeled a few things that he brings up, and there's something about, having short measurable goals, like kind of just, hey, focusing on this mark, analyzing the strengths and weaknesses, making adjustments to where whoever is in the boat, leading from the front. Leif talks about that boat captain went to the front of the boat, which is interesting. But to tie it all in, one of the things he said in there is that leader has to believe. And so just like you were saying, how important it is for our guys to believe in what we're doing here, because that, in my opinion, was the key difference between that leader and the previous leader. Previous leader didn't believe his team could get it done. It was a victimization. It was, I just got a bad group and I can't win with these guys. Okay. The lack of belief. But this new boat crew leader came in and said, look, I just came from the winning crew. You guys are no different from that group over there. I know we can get this done. I believe we can win this. And here's how we're going to do it. So it's that confidence, but that belief, and just like something we always talk about, it's one thing to say that you believe in it, but do you actually believe it? And, kind of just to wrap it up here, it's just the leaders that we're working with now, it's like if they don't learn anything else, it's you actually have to believe in what we're doing. Number one. you can't just, it isn't just words. This is actually, you're embodying that belief. This is 100% you believe in the mission. But number two, it's like, we want you to be serving. Okay. What does that mean? It's like, well, you're humble and you're here to take care of your teammates. You're here to serve the team. That's sacrificial to yourself, but you truly have to believe in that as well. It's like, you have to believe in what that means. So anyway, I just thought that was really interesting, that to kind of bring it full circle and what you were mostly talking about, which was being believing, being loyal, and having that servant attitude. That is the leader that was able to make it work. So just kudos to you for those three values that you highly you value highly.
I mean, it's got me a long way, so it's, it's helped. It's when things are taken away, and unfortunately I'm at the age where you start losing friends and you start losing family and you start losing some things, belief becomes really important, right? And then, so now I'm at the age, not only when I was younger, I believe that, now I'm at the age where you really do need to believe that, because you never know. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Coach, thank you so much for jumping on here with us and talking about leadership, talking about coaching, and all things football related and life related. So we really appreciate your time. Anything else you wanted to say before we cut things off?
no, like I said, I could talk for hours, but I appreciate it. And this is an awesome thing. And if anybody's out there that does listen, it is 100% worth it to have some kind of leadership council, led by somebody outside of a program, that for your kids, because it's always great to have an outside entity that just speaks to the kids, that so they don't hear your voice or the other people's voices every day. And somebody is probably a little more qualified sometimes. I know as a coach, we're leaders, right? Coach is a leader, but it never hurts. There's one thing I will never turn away any kind of help when it comes to things like that. And I'll have the final say. We always talk about that, but it definitely helps to have somebody else out there to speak to the young men.